Inside a castle at the top of a mountain sat a woman with a flame in her hand seated on a throne. In front of her stood the swordsman known as Ishikisoya. As soon as she asked when they would begin, he immediately advanced and started slaughtering the skeletons. He moved toward her, activating his maximum power, while another man beside him, who was a warrior-class fighter named Kongu Shikara, sent a pillar flying toward the woman. However, the monster effortlessly dissolved the pillar with just one hand. She created a fireball and declared that the inferior species should be extinguished. But from behind the two warriors, a girl raised an ice barrier. This was the mage, a rather cute one, known as Sagiri Aya. Then, out of nowhere, someone emerged from a portal carrying potions, bringing healing to them. This was the group's support member, Abe Taru. The team thanked him, and at that moment, someone from behind called out to them. A white-haired boy immediately expressed his gratitude for everyone's support and said that now it was finally enough. The boss seemed frightened, and he leaped forward to deliver a slash. This was the strongest of the heroes, known as Kira Haruto. And with that, an announcement spread throughout the city. S-rank guild Byakuran had finally slain the infernal demon queen. Everyone celebrated, and we learned that 200 years ago, portals had appeared, and monsters began roaming the earth. Along with them, 7 demonic gods also emerged, and at last the first one had been defeated. The Byakuran guild walked through the city as the people rejoiced. Reporters arrived to congratulate them, and Kira told them that this was all done to help people around the world. Someone then asked what their secret was. How were they all such high-level, top-tier S-rank warriors? Kira replied that they trained hard every day. The scene then shifted to another location where Ishiki scoffed, saying that this training thing was a joke. Shikara agreed, saying that he wasn't wrong. Sagiri remarked that their job was tough, while Taru said that it wasn't that bad. At that moment, Kira appeared and stated that while it wasn't necessarily difficult, it was by no means pleasant either. And then we saw 2 siblings, chained up. The boy was named Kiryu Makoto Shin, and the girl Kiryu Minori Shin. Makoto called Kira a monster, to which he responded, "It's not quite like that, come on." Thanks to him, Kira had grown so strong, and for that, he felt incredibly grateful. In the very next instant, he slashed the boy's head. Wait, what? The kid died. Makoto explained that in this world, cutting down plants, animals, or even other people didn't grant experience. To level up, one had to kill creatures. However, there was a small exception, undead beings. His head then reconstructed itself, just as Kira leveled up again. He stated that it was always nice to come here every day, killing him infinitely and continuously gaining experience. There's nothing easier in this world, he said. With lifeless eyes, the siblings stared at them, and then Shikara began beating them. At the same time, Sagiri cast fire magic at the girl, burning her completely. Man, she burned until she was nothing but a little skeleton. Turbo came over with a potion and made her drink it. And of course, Saya was there slashing away as well. Countless level-up notifications continued popping up. After a long time, they were already exhausted, and Kira said that it had been a great training session. Shikara wanted to continue, but the others were feeling worn out and wanted to go out for a drink. At that moment, Saya noticed that Taru was looking at something on his laptop and asked what was wrong. Taru said he was having trouble understanding the information about his poisons. His friend told him to drop it and go have fun with some girls in the city. However, out of nowhere, Taru grabbed Minori and said that she was already enough. The only problem was that he had already tried everything with her, so it wasn't fun anymore. Kira, looking deep in thought, observed her and suddenly seemed to have an idea. He walked over to Taru and said there was still something they hadn't done yet. Taru asked what it was, and Kira answered, "Pregnancy. Guys, we don't really need to see what's about to happen here, do we? You already know very well." Our desperate protagonist tried to help, but a spear of light pinned him to the ground while Kira laughed. He told him that if he wanted to blame someone, he should blame himself for being born with that immortal body. Sometime later, they left, talking about today's dungeon interview. Guys, just look at our boy, stuck to the ground, trapped by those spears. And now you're going to tell me you don't want this bastard to get his revenge and kill all those scumbags. The poor guy was left there, unable to see anything, until Minori approached and pulled the sword from his little neck. And if she took the sword, man, she used it on herself. She wanted to forget everything that had happened and erase any memory of it from her body. Sometime later, she had been resurrected. Makoto couldn't do anything as the Holy Spirit prevented his regeneration. The only problem was that with or without regeneration, the pain remained. On the other hand, the moment his body shut down, he would come back to life. He couldn't faint, he couldn't die, and the pain never stopped. That was why they always left those holy spears on him. Minori apologized while cutting him, trying to remove all the spears. He then asked her to aim for his heart so he would come back with all his limbs restored. But this time, something different happened. The moment she struck his heart, she leveled up. Their expressions changed. They had no idea why this had happened. At that instant, before Makoto could say anything, she had already figured it out and asked if he was thinking the same thing she was. Right away, he understood that she wanted them both to use this to level up. Makoto hesitated for a second, but she told him that he wouldn't be killing her. He would be killing all of them through her. And together, they would keep dying until the day they could take their revenge. He was shocked, thought for a second, then remembered what had happened to her. He stood up and said that they should start right now. And so they began leveling up, killing each other. Again, and again, and again, and again, and again. They promised to keep taking each other's lives until the day their vengeance was complete. Guys, now we finally know why he wants revenge and how he's going to get strong enough for it. All that's left is to see how the story unfolds. Makoto then commented about Abatero, the team's pack mule and support member. In theory, he was a cowardly and quiet person. However, anyone who had met him up close always said the same thing. That kid was extremely weird. 3 years ago, Teru was staring at Goblin's organs, talking about how he could connect the two. Then Kira opened the door and said that, as always, he was being very diligent. But if he was interested, there was something far better for him to dissect. Walking down the corridors, Teru was confused. This was an area that very few people ever accessed. Standing in front of a table, Kira asked if anyone there wanted glory. Everyone looked confused, but he said that this was a choice now available to them. Depending on their decision, the future could be filled with glory, something no human had ever achieved. However, at the same time, they would be trapped in a darkness from which they would never escape. With these options in front of them, he wanted to know who would continue with him. The power-hungry bastards, of course, all accepted. At that, Kira began opening a secret passage in the floor, telling everyone that he would guide them to where their glory awaited. As they descended the seemingly endless staircase, no one had any idea that this place even existed beneath the guild. Down below, there was a door that required a fingerprint to open. Everyone was anxious, eager to see what Kira wanted to show them. That was when they entered the room, and he introduced them to Makoto and Minori. At first, everyone was shocked and said this was madness. However, Kira told them not to worry. They had human forms, but they were ghouls. They would never die. He approached with his sword and slashed, saying that these bastards should have been wiped out long ago. They were an extremely rare race. At that very moment, Makoto's face reconstructed itself. Everyone in the room had heard of the tribe of immortals, but they didn't understand what this had to do with glory. Then Kira pulled out his phone. On the screen, they could see the real-time analysis of his attributes and his level. When they saw 50, everyone looked terrified. And he stated the obvious. To level up, you have to take risks. And the stronger you get, the worse the creatures become. Then he stabbed Minori with his sword and said, "But this way, it's pretty easy." At that moment, his level increased. In an instant, Teru lost it, saying this was the best solution he had ever heard. He threw Minori to the ground, eager to find out what it was like inside a body. A short while later, he had leveled up and was ecstatic. He removed her blindfold and resumed throwing all sorts of poisons and attacks at her. The rest of the group was still hesitant, but Seiya commented that they really did seem like immortal monsters. If that was the case, then they weren't human, so there was no problem. And with that, the entire group began leveling up, while Kira told everyone to enjoy it to the fullest. Back to the present. 4 of them were heading to an interview, wondering where Teru was. Kira said it seemed like he was off doing an experiment or something. At that moment, Teru was arriving at the guild building, cheerfully heading downstairs. He opened the door, saying to his doll that he was back, but that was when he found Makoto killing her. Teru froze in shock, demanding to know what he was doing and ordering him to let go of his precious doll. That was when the siblings turned, surrounded by an aura, and he grew confused. These two were just skinny little dolls last night, so why did they look so strong today? The truth was, they had always had low levels, so whenever the others were farming, they had to spend hours killing just to gain a few levels. On the other hand, since they had been killing each other, they were leveling up simultaneously, so they gained experience much faster. Teru fell to the floor, desperately trying to figure out who these monsters were. He rushed to the wall, thinking of something, anything, he could do. Then he warned them that there was no way in hell they were escaping from here. He slammed the danger button. In an instant, Makimura appeared, announcing that today they would learn never to try escaping again. But Makoto simply said, "It's time to begin our revenge." Makoto slowly stepped forward. Minori seemed to be hiding, but he told her not to worry. He would handle this. Then Toru smirked, saying the two of them were nothing but experience and food, and they were about to learn why they would never escape from here. But Makoto just stared silently at the creature. That was when Toru mentioned that in his next experiment, he wanted to see what kind of child would be born from a human and a chimera. Dear God, somebody killed this guy already. Makoto told Minori not to listen to him and declared that he was going to kill that bastard. Toru then ordered the chimera to attack, and it leaped toward Makoto. With a single step back, Makoto dodged the first strike, but the entire wall behind him was obliterated. The creature was far stronger and faster than he expected. Suddenly, a hand emerged from nowhere, and he barely dodged a stab. Toru praised him but told him to stop running already. Makoto knew what this was. It was one of the skills you gained when leveling up. Each class had its own, and Toru's class was Helper, which meant he had countless abilities, ranging from Assassin, Tamer, Pharmacist, and even this portal ability. Even though the class name didn't sound intimidating, he had countless skills and had even killed the Demon Queen. Makoto kept dodging while Toru attacked with a portal. Then the chimera suddenly came from the side and landed a direct hit on his arm. At the same time, it grabbed his legs and lifted him. Then slash, his arm and leg were severed, and he was hurled into the wall. The only good thing was that he was immortal, so yeah, he'd be back. Toru laughed and told him to hurry back to his cell, since that was all he was good for, helping them level up. In the background, Minori was still in shock, but of course in the middle of all the smoke, Makoto reappeared, regenerating. The fool told the chimera that it needed to take this more seriously to finish the job. He gave the order to eat, and then the chimera took a huge bite out of Makoto. All right, man, it's time to start throwing some punches. The fool was celebrating, saying he was experiencing true power, until suddenly, the chimera froze. It started vomiting and collapsed onto its side. Toru had no idea what had just happened, but Makoto said that he had been instinctively avoiding it. But now, he no longer needed to. He regenerated, and at that moment, the fool rushed at him, demanding how he could dare kill the chimera like that. But the protagonist simply told him to be careful, because at this rate, he would die too. That was when Toru noticed his hand was melting. In an instant, he dropped to the ground. He couldn't understand how Makoto, who had no profession, had managed to develop a new ability. That should only be possible if someone underwent training. Then the protagonist explained. Every time he had been poisoned, it had been perfect training. And with that, he splattered blood onto Toru's face, saying he was returning the poison. At that moment, he kicked him, sending the fool flying backward into the wall. Before he could even speak, Makoto was already approaching, saying, "If it had been just me, fine, but you messed with my sister." Then, a punch to the gut, slamming him into the ground. The fool couldn't even call for help, but Makoto activated his regeneration ability. As soon as Toru managed to stand confused, he asked why. Makoto simply said it was obvious. That alone wasn't nearly enough to calm the rage he was feeling. Today, Toru would experience the pain they felt when their organs were torn out. Makoto would make sure he fully understood the meaning of karma. Night fell, and the rest of Byakuren was returning to the guild after their interviews. Saya ran ahead, feeling uneasy about how long Toru had been gone. But as soon as he reached the top floor, he froze in shock at the sight. The chimera lay dead on the ground. He rushed to the door to see what was happening. And inside, he found Toru's body, completely melted and hanging in pieces. Now we learn about Kangu Shikara. Alright guys, this is the next target. The S-rank martial artist and strongest member of Byakuren. To his friends, he was known as a man with a strong heart, one who would risk his life for his comrades. But those who had hunted with him knew the truth. He had a cruel nature. Some guys standing nearby said they wished they could be as strong as Kangu one day. One of them was about to say it was too difficult, but Kangu placed a hand on his shoulder and agreed. He told them that the body he had today was something he had earned through hard work. He encouraged them to keep pushing themselves, saying that he too would continue doing his best. Then he said goodbye, saying he was going back to training. Everyone was moved, calling him incredible, saying he had already surpassed level 300. But of course, that wasn't really the case. In a way, you could say he worked hard, since he did spend the most time in the cell. He had even hired a woman to step on his head, just because he was too lazy. All day long, just farming, farming, farming. After all, there was no easier method than this. Leveling up with defenseless creatures was perfect. The only problem was that it was getting harder to gain levels, and he was getting bored. And whenever that happened, he liked hearing the screams. With that, he struck Makoto's ribs, saying he had broken about 200 bones today. Another experience point gained. And as soon as Minori regenerated, it was her turn. He sliced her with his legs, saying that they would entertain him for a long time. Back to the present. He was in the middle of bench pressing when suddenly Seiya burst into the room. He called for the group, saying he had found Makoto's melted body. When Kira arrived, he demanded to know where the siblings were. Seiya responded, saying he had no idea. When he entered, Toru was dead, and the siblings were gone. Shikara started screaming, calling for Toru. Then he ran over to the laptop and saw that a video was open. It was Makoto relentlessly punching Teru's stomach over and over. Then Shikara slammed the ground in rage, yelling that they had tortured him in a horrible way. And at that moment, Kira drew his sword. Before anyone could even react, he finished off Toru. His head rolled to the ground. Shikara demanded to know what the hell he was doing. But Kira simply explained. Toru was beyond saving. In the state he was in, even if he had survived, he would only have suffered. Seiya agreed, saying that his life wouldn't have lasted much longer either way. And Sagiri added that she was certain there was no healing magic that could have saved someone in that condition. Now the musclehead bastard was punching the ground, furious, swearing revenge. But listen up, fool, you were the one who started this mess, so your turn is coming soon enough. Then, out of nowhere, a voice rang out, or maybe Kira said it. Useless. Seiya thought it was Kira, and turned to him. But it seemed like everyone was confused, unsure where the voice had come from. Kira then turned to leave, saying they had to inform the world that the hero who had saved them had been killed. Sagiri asked about a funeral, but Kira shut it down, saying, "No, we'll make it a live broadcast." Meanwhile, the siblings were running through the forest. Ever since they left Toru behind, they had been running nonstop, and now Minori was already exhausted. They decided to stop for a moment to rest, talking about how they had finally escaped. They had managed to get out of the hell they had been trapped in. Minori cried while Makoto reassured her that this time he would protect her. Sometime later, she had fallen asleep on his lap. Unfortunately, just like her, he was also exhausted. The problem was that he didn't know when those guys would come after them, so he had to stay on guard. But fatigue and sleep got the better of him, and he almost dozed off, until he felt someone's presence. Immediately, he stood up, certain that there was a malicious aura in the air. Minori was safe, so he decided to check out who was nearby, exuding such killing intent. He found a cabin with a light on, and it seemed like the aura was coming from there. But the moment he stopped to observe, a guy who looked like a bootleg version of Frieza appeared and stabbed him. Makoto barely managed to dodge to the side, but he was already surrounded by a group of adventurers. He circled around, wondering who the hell these guys were. The group closed in from all sides while someone asked, "Isn't this the guy?" The only problem was that the girl wasn't with him. Either way, minus 500 million just to kidnap one person was way too good to pass up. At that moment, a purple-haired woman activated an area-wide strengthening buff, boosting everyone. A musclehead wielding a massive mace rushed in to strike Makoto. The attack landed perfectly, his head twisted completely, and the brute laughed, saying it was too easy. But then the protagonist simply fixed his face. Everyone looked stunned. What kind of person could survive a hit like that? But Makoto was only interested in knowing, were these guys underlings of that group? No one answered. He said that since they attacked him, it didn't matter anyway. He lunged at the first guy and in an instant landed a direct hit to his stomach. The fool didn't even react, and Makoto warned them. Any malice directed at him would be considered an act of hostility. Two more rushed in, one actually managed to slash his arm. The guy celebrated, but then Makoto simply ripped off his own arm and shoved it into the guy's mouth. At the same time, he grabbed the other guy's face, his arm regenerating instantly before smashing a punch into him. Now only the witch remained. She activated her purple lightning ability, striking Makoto directly. She smirked, saying it didn't matter how fast a person was. This attack was unavoidable. The problem? He stood up just fine. She was confused. How was this possible? She fired more attacks, unleashing a barrage of lightning toward him. But even after all that, he calmly kept walking toward her. She panicked and tried to run, but he told her she wouldn't escape from here. And with that, everyone was tied up in the trees. I really thought he was going to kill them all. But it didn't make sense to just torture the entire world. At least he got some loot out of it. He stole their supplies. Then he returned to his sister, who was just waking up. "You were really sleeping peacefully, huh?" She asked where he got the clothes from. He simply said, "A very kind person gave them to me." She smiled, and he added that he even got some clothes for her too. They both got dressed, he cut his hair, and no, the dynamic duo was ready. They continued escaping through the forest, paused for a moment on top of a mountain, and arrived at a waterfall. Inside a cave, they would spend the night, and he had even stolen some food from those guys. Minori ate happily while Makoto was analyzing their situation. At least they had weapons and food now. The problem was it lacked information on everything happening. So he explained that he would head into the city to understand the situation and gather more supplies. Until he returned, she was to stay hidden there. Now, walking through the bustling streets, Makoto was amazed by how developed the city was. He bought some chicken, went to the market, and a little while later, sat down in the plaza, thinking to himself, how am I going to kill those other four? Toru was just the support guy, but those guys knew how to fight for real. And to make sure they suffered the worst death possible, he needed to know each of their weaknesses. That's when he noticed an airship flying overhead, playing a video of Kira. The entire Byakuran group was in the footage, while the leader spoke about how their comrade had been cruelly tortured. They would never forgive the person who killed the savior of this city, Taru. And right then, they showed a picture of Makoto and his sister. Makoto immediately understood why all those people were hunting him. Meanwhile, Kira, fake tears streaming down his face, cried dramatically, declaring that they would not let the murderer escape, and that everyone would make them pay the price. The protagonist knew this was the best way for that bastard to cover up the crimes he had committed. But to him it didn't matter, because from the very beginning, he was determined to take him down. A few days after they escaped, Shikara was punching a green-haired man, telling him he had to bring at least one piece of useful information. Staguri told him to relax. They had already leveled up a lot, so they didn't even need those two anymore. On the other hand, Saya was nervous about the possibility that their crimes could be exposed to the world. Kira, however, dismissed it, saying that was the least of their worries. The entire world saw those two as enemies, and with their 500 million bounty on each of their heads, it would definitely be hunted down. Shikara wanted to know what the plan was to just let them escape so easily after everything they had done to Taru. They tortured their comrade so he would never forgive them. He would make sure to capture them and make them suffer more than ever before. Yeah, buddy. Honestly, that's going to be pretty difficult. I don't even know what you're going to do. Tell me, what can you do? You're the one who's going to suffer, you bastard. Sagiri said she understood how he felt. Taru was targeted because he was the weakest. The fool Shikara was about to lose it until he was restrained by chains. She told him to calm down since those two weren't even a real threat to them. At that, Kira told everyone to relax a little. They had to remember, Makoto had left a message saying he would come to kill them, which meant that they only had to prepare. They didn't need to panic. Besides, the entire world was on their side. So it didn't matter where they ran, they would be found. Shikara didn't want to agree. Akira simply told him to calm down, because to the world, they were the heroes who would slay the Demon King. That was enough for today. It was best if everyone went back to rest so they wouldn't get exhausted. But Shikara, gritting his teeth, swore to himself he would never forgive them. He would make sure that he was the first to find them. That same morning, the siblings were waking up in the cave. They had slept peacefully, since one of them had used an illusion ability to hide their presence. Not sure who used it, but someone did. Now that they were rested, it was time to continue their journey. However, Minori wanted to know how they were going to move forward now that they were criminals being hunted down everywhere. Makoto told her not to worry. He had found something very useful. Masks. He started giving a whole complex explanation saying, "This is a device that covers the face but leaves the eyes exposed." Minori just nodded, saying that maybe it would work. The only problem was, if they ran into those people, they would be discovered instantly. Minori then asked where they were going. Makoto replied, they were heading to a dungeon, a separate realm from the real world, hidden behind gates. A place where ordinary people weren't even allowed to set foot in. The terrain was extremely complex, making it the perfect place to hide. And according to the guidebook he found in the city, there was a swamp dungeon at the top of this mountain. That would become their base. Now standing right in front of the gate, Makoto told Minori to prepare herself. No matter what happened, he would be with her. They stepped forward and found themselves inside the dungeon. The ground was green and the sky was red. Makoto told her to stay alert since there could be creatures around. The moment he said that, he stepped on a vine and immediately took a headshot. He quickly warned his sister to watch out for the vines, because clearly this place wasn't safe at all. That was when Minori's expression changed, and she told him to look ahead. Right in front of them was a pack of six-eyed foxes. Makoto told her not to worry, he would handle it. The first creature lunged, but he easily sidestepped and punched it in the head. The thing dropped dead instantly. Damn. But then he got bitten in half the very next second. Unfortunately for the monster, Makoto regenerated immediately and was already back. But he was shaken. The level and strength of the creatures here were completely different. from the ones that had emerged before. Minori started activating a spell, telling him not to get hurt. As soon as she cast it, he felt himself getting stronger, and his severed arm on the ground seemed to be under his control. He gave a command, and the arm moved, floating in the air. Then he forced the monster's mouth open and punched it right in the middle. But of course the poor guy was exhausted, and Minori immediately called out to him. He reassured her, saying he was just a little tired. But he was seriously impressed. Her strengthening ability had generated such a powerful effect. And just like that, 1 month had passed since the siblings escaped. In another dungeon, a group of adventurers was fighting some dragons. Shikara approached, carrying a massive boulder, and hurled it at the creatures. One of the two beasts was sent flying, and as the other tried to stand up, Shikara rushed in and ripped off its wing. Everyone was stunned. He was killing wyverns with his bare hands. Sometime later, while eating, he was fuming, wanting to know where those damn siblings were. His men reassured him that they would be found soon. After all, the entire world was hunting them. Then one of them spoke up. He had interesting information. Apparently, there was a masked man wandering around, and he looked a little like Makoto. A friend of his had gone to the poison dungeon and claimed to have seen this mysterious man there. This strange person was killing venomous snakes without even using a weapon, which was extremely bizarre, because these A-rank creatures had such corrosive venom that people usually fought them from a distance. That's why he found it odd. In his mind, no one besides the hero party should be capable of defeating such creatures. But the musclehead just shrugged, saying that the world was vast. Maybe there were warriors out there that they didn't know about. That said, he was curious. He wanted to meet someone who could kill a snake with their bare hands. He asked when this happened, and the guy told him 3 days ago, which meant maybe they were still in that dungeon. One of them started to suggest they go tomorrow, but got punched in the face before he could finish. Shikara declared they were going there right now. Hunting down this masked man sounded exciting. Meanwhile, sure enough, our protagonist and his sister were still in the same swamp hunting, and at that moment he saw a portal activating. From a distance, he could feel the presence of Kangu Shikara. Makoto quickly warned Minori that he was going, but she, terrified, insisted that she wanted to go with him. He told her to calm down. They had become so much stronger. It was time for their revenge to take another step forward. She understood, but she could see the concern on his face. Still, Makoto continued preparing, saying that one thing was certain. He wasn't going to die. Minori agreed, but told him to be prepared, because this guy was on a completely different level. Before he left, she of course gave him a buff. And with that, Makoto rushed through the forest, hiding behind a tree, and activated a vision-enhancing technique. Through it, he saw the exact moment that Kangu Shikara stepped inside. He wanted to fight this guy, but if he could escape with Minori, that would be even better. That he noticed a wild boar and got an idea. He made a small cut on his own finger, then stabbed the creature. This activated a hypnosis ability, allowing him to make the creature see whatever he wanted. He repeated this with several others, and then commanded them all to attack the entrance. At that moment, one of Shikara's men pointed ahead, warning that something was coming. An entire herd was charging in their direction, but Shikara just grinned, saying this would be a good warm-up. The group started fighting while he laughed, saying this was way too easy. Sometime later, after they had finished, the group was about to move again, but one of them was asking for a break. Shikara said it wasn't necessary, until the guy suddenly said he felt weird, and blood started pouring from his eye. The entire group collapsed, writhing in agony, while Shikara couldn't understand what was happening. Then, he realized there was poison everywhere. The problem? He had killed these creatures countless times, and this wasn't an effect they normally had. In the middle of his thoughts, Makoto appeared behind him, ready to strike. But Shikara dodged. Makoto went for a stab, and Shikara, not recognizing him, commented, "You're the masked guy." Then he grabbed the knife with his bare hand, trapping Makoto's arm. Even so, Makoto resisted the punch and was sent flying backward. They stared at each other for a moment. Then Shikara smirked, saying he could tell from Makoto's movements and resistance that despite the rumors, this guy was actually strong. He really liked this guy. Yeah, just as I thought. He still didn't recognize who Makoto was, and now Makoto was confused. Then Shikara said, "I like strong people, and I hate weaklings who deserve to die. These worthless maggots at my feet only ended up like this because they fell into a trap. But you seem strong, so you should join us. If you serve under the name of Byakuren, you'll gain wealth, honor, and women. Everything in this world could be yours. Now tell me your answer to this incredible offer." Makoto didn't respond. Kangu insisted, saying he would only say this one more time. He liked strong people and hated the weak. Those guys following him might have had some potential, but unfortunately they didn't, and that's why he despised them. At the very least, they were perfect for being used as punching bags. Makoto remembered. That's exactly how he had been treated. And so he asked, "Why do you enjoy tormenting the weak so much?" Kangvu responded, "Because it's fun. Whenever I punch a weakling, the reaction is always the same. They beg for forgiveness, plead for mercy, and cry for help. Their faces, twisted, filled with fear. There's nothing more entertaining than watching their desperate expressions." In an instant, Makoto was about to land a hit on him, but Kangvu caught his arm, saying, "That was a great punch. Really, the best way for men to understand each other is to fight first." He prepared to strike back, but Makoto dodged, grabbed his chest, and jumped backward, just as he expected. This bastard was a monster. Kangvu charged again, this time with an explosive punch. It landed directly, sending Makoto flying across the swamp, destroying the ground in the process. That was the strongest attack he had ever taken in his life. Kangvu approached, asking, "How is it possible that you survived that attack?" It was impressive. Someone actually withstood 30% of his power. Upon hearing that this wasn't even Kangvu's full strength, Makoto hesitated for a moment. Kangvu wanted to know, "Aren't you going to use a weapon or something? You better give it your all. I want a real fight, or we both go all out so I can show you who's the strongest." Makoto charged again, this time with his knife. The attack seemed like it was about to hit Kangvu's leg, but the blade shattered. Kangvu smirked, saying, "My abdomen is like steel. Nothing's gonna leave a scratch on me." Then he activated his flame aura and declared, "By now you should already understand the difference in our power. You can't win." Even so, Makoto attacked again, telling him to shut up. Annoyed, Kangvu knee-struck him in the side, sending him flying into the swamp. The brute laughed, saying, "Oops, sorry for knocking you into the venom. I just killed the guy I had high expectations for. That's a shame." But just as he was about to walk away, suddenly, a knife stabbed into his arm. He ripped it out, panicking at the thought of being poisoned. Then he turned around and demanded to know how the hell someone drenched in acid was still alive to attack him. "This guy doesn't even seem human," he muttered. And then he thought of someone else who was just like that. In an instant, his entire aura flared up, and he rushed at Makoto. It seemed like he was trying to capture him, but Makoto dodged. Kangvu threw a punch. It smashed the ground, destroying half the dungeon in a massive explosion. Makoto, who had been right there, was blown away along with the entire area. And the problem was, his mask had fallen off. Kangvu started laughing, but then his expression darkened. "So it really is you. Finally, I've found you. Kiryu Makoto." Now everything made sense. "That explains why you took my hits. It wasn't because you're tough. It's because of your regeneration. This is perfect. Ever since you did that to Taro, I've been dreaming of my revenge. And of course, forget about us teaming up. You're dying right here." Makoto, unfazed, asked, "What's all this about killing me? That's nothing compared to what I'm about to do to you." They locked eyes, and Kangvu charged. Mid-run, he threw a barrage of stones at Makoto, and just the impact from the stones alone was enough to tear off chunks of Makoto's body. Then Kangvu leaped from above, ready to land a devastating kick. He declared, "You won't be leaving this place alive." An explosion erupted, but as soon as Kangvu landed, Makoto was already charging straight at him. A direct punch, right to the middle of his face. But the bastard just smiled. "Is that all you've got?" And with that, he countered with a brutal punch, smashing Makoto into the wall. As he walked forward, he started noticing something odd. "Why is the kid trembling?" Then he laughed. "I knew it. It's because of fear, isn't it? The terror I made you feel all this time, it's carved into your body." Makoto was running, his face looking desperate. But I'm sure this bastard was playing some fourth-dimensional chess against this idiot. Kangvu slowly asked, "Do you remember the days you were tortured?" Meanwhile, behind his back, Makoto activated his arm's power. The attack came from behind, but Kangvu just elbowed it away, shattering it. "That little trick is way too simple. I won't be defeated by something so weak." And with that, he landed a brutal punch to Makoto's stomach and followed it up with another to his face. As he spoke, Kangvu mentioned that he was curious about how Makoto had gotten so strong in such a short period of time. If he didn't want to answer, and he would just beat him senseless like always until he got the truth. But what he really wanted to know was, if Makoto was here, then where was his sister? The routine, as always, would be so much better if, after beating you up, I could spend some time with your sister. This bastard needs to die already. Makoto, furious, tried to move but was crushed once again. Kongu then commented that it looked like he would have to restrain Makoto so he wouldn't regenerate. However, when he looked down at the blood, Makoto's body was gone. The protagonist was now behind him, surrounded by a strange aura. And the idiot finally noticed. Makoto's regeneration had become even faster. In a split second, he vanished, then reappeared at Kongu's side, fist ready to strike. But even so, Kongu managed to counter with his own punch, shattering Makoto's fingers. Kongu praised him. You really got faster. But against my power, it's useless. Your regeneration won't be able to keep up. With that, he ripped off another arm and then landed a brutal kick to the other one. Makoto was back on the ground again, completely dismembered. Kongu smirked. Your biggest weakness is that you rely so much on regenerating. You don't even know how to defend yourself properly. But then, Makoto started laughing. Kongu frowned. What's so funny? Makoto, grinning, responded, I'm just happy because you're still the same dumb idiot as always. That's when Kongu noticed something strange. All the limbs he had torn off were now glowing with an aura. Makoto gave the comment, and every severed limb rose into the air, charging straight at Kongu. Kongu easily defended himself, scoffing. You really think you can win with something like this? The problem? This time, the arms were dodging his attacks. They were surrounded by a mysterious aura, and Makoto declared, that fear you carved into my body, now I'm going to pour it all out into you. With that, Makoto landed a punch, straight into Kongu's arm, and it disintegrated instantly. Unlike Makoto, Kongu didn't have regeneration. Makoto smirked. Time for a little strength test. Kongu, enraged, screamed to his followers, I don't forgive you for this, and charged forward with another punch. But Makoto called upon all of his severed arms, merging them into his own arm. And with that, he created a massive fist, and landed a devastating punch directly into Kongu's remaining arm. The fool was sent flying, losing another limb in the process. Makoto smirked. So how does it feel to lose in terms of strength? Today you're going to learn what it feels like to have fear carved into your body 1 week after the fight. In the back here in guild halls, Kira asked how the preparations for the new dungeon were going. Saya responded that they were almost finished. He had been working hard to make sure they would succeed, and that they would finally avenge Toru. But strangely, Kira asked, who's this Toru guy? Saya was confused, but when he looked at Kira's face, the guy seemed serious. Then suddenly, Kira's expression changed, and he laughed, saying, just kidding. Saya awkwardly laughed, asking him not to joke about that. Then he casually mentioned that he hadn't seen Kongu around much lately. Kira shrugged. He's probably running around like a madman, trying to find those siblings. After all, they were the perfect punching bags, and that was something he really enjoyed. Saya nodded, agreeing. Yeah, I can't wait for the day they return. It's gonna be perfect. We'll train them all over again. Then, someone suddenly came running down the guild halls, yelling for them. They turned around, only to be met with urgent news. A package had arrived, but there was something strange about it. Realizing something was off, Saya and Kira rushed toward it. Sagiri warned them, you better prepare yourselves for what you're about to see. And they opened the box. We already knew what was inside, didn't we? Kongu, chopped into 39,000 pieces, a short while later in a meeting room. Sagiri used magic and confirmed, there's no doubt about it, these are pieces of his body. Saya, furious, slammed the table. Sagiri, still shocked, asked, who would do something like this? Kira casually remarked, if someone went out of their way to send us his remains, it means they hold a grudge against us. Immediately, Sagiri declared, it has to be those siblings. Saya couldn't believe it, but Kira suspected it ever since Toru was killed. Even though he was weaker than us, he was still far stronger than your average hunter. And now, with Kongu dead, it's confirmed. Those siblings somehow got stronger. Saya refused to believe it. There's no way they could have gotten that strong in such a short time. Strong enough to kill someone who was one of the strongest in the world. But Kira simply told them, then ask yourselves, how did we get stronger? Saya responded that it was easy. They had kept killing those bastards and continued leveling up. Kira then said that he should have realized lately they hadn't been gaining much experience. But those siblings, they must have been killing each other while regenerating, allowing them to rapidly gain enough strength to kill Toru and take their revenge. At that moment, both of them were shocked. Sagiri told them to calm down and focus. She also felt bad about Shikara's death, but they needed to decide what to do next. She used a mental stabilization spell on Saya and told him to rest. He stood up and thanked her. Strangely, Kira also told her to leave, saying he wanted to be alone for a while. She agreed and left the room. Then, he walked over to the box, grabbed Kongo's arm, and declared, "I won't be intimidated by this." He tossed everything aside, saying, "If they think they're going to get their revenge, they're delusional. Killing that guy was impressive, sure, but it was also stupid." Then he crushed one of Kongo's eyes, muttering, "Those siblings will soon taste the bitterness of revenge." What Kira didn't know was that this eye belonged to Makoto, and he had seen everything. Makoto had wanted to stay longer, to gather more information about their base, but he was worried about Minori, so it was better to head back. Still, bringing this package was the perfect excuse to do some shopping. One of the most important things he bought, a teddy bear, as a gift for Minori. He was jumping from rooftop to rooftop when he saw a group of men in an alley. Another person was running away, wearing a hood that looked a lot like his. That was odd. There wasn't usually any violence in this area, since it was controlled by Byakuren. The group cornered the girl, telling her, "You're not going to escape anymore." Through the hood, he could see she looked a lot like Minori. And just as the men were about to do something, Makoto appeared behind them and punched one of them in the face before they even realized what had happened. He was about to tell the girl to run, but the moment she removed her hood, Makoto froze in shock. Of course, we're not going to find out what her face looks like just yet. Meanwhile, Minori was waiting in the forest. After a long time, Makoto finally arrived. She immediately asked, "Who's that person in your arms?" Makoto told her to calm down first and to take a good look. The girl had an X-shaped scar on her face, but aside from that, she looked exactly like Minori. Next chapter, Ishiki Saya. No doubt, he was the next target. Saya was the proud commander of Byakuren Guild, an S-rank swordsman with the greatest blade techniques in the world. Handsome, beloved by women, and someone who easily made friends. It was said that he was the one who kept the guild atmosphere so pleasant. But of course, only those who lived close to the bastard knew what he was really like. A woman was holding a glass of wine, but the moment she accidentally dropped it, Saya punched her in the face, just like the rest of them. This guy was completely insane. Then in front of Minori, he said, "In the end, you are the best of them all. Unlike any of the others, I can do whatever I want to you, and you never break." He sliced her and added, "Your screams are always the best." Makoto shouted for him to stop, but all he got was a sword strike in return. Saya told him to shut up. Tormenting men isn't fun at all. He grabbed Minori by the neck, grinning. "But this is so much more fun." Sometime later, Saya was humming to himself, walking through the guild halls. Then, from the corner of his eye, he saw Kira and Toru talking. That area was off limits. So, what were they doing there? He tried to listen in, approaching stealthily so they wouldn't notice. But Kira called his name. "Don't just stand there watching like that." Saya, embarrassed, hesitantly stepped forward, saying he just wanted to know what they were doing there. Kira casually said, "It's nothing special, but if you're curious, you can take a look too." With that, they entered a room where they were producing countless Minori clones. Saya was stunned. Kira explained, "The plan is to create as many as possible. That way it'll be more efficient for leveling up. All we needed was to combine Teru's talent with Byakuren's money and technology. And now, it's possible. The problem? The regeneration technique was still incomplete. The clones kept breaking apart, and they still weren't gaining experience points from killing them." Toru explained, "I tried everything I know, so we're thinking about giving up on this project." Saya asked, "Why throw them all away just like that?" Toru responded, "Because the real one never dies. So it's way better that way." Kira nodded. "I agree, but if that's the case, I want one of these clones for myself." Toru shrugged. "Fine, but just so you know, they're useless. They have no will, no emotions. They don't give experience points. They serve no purpose at all. They were basically just dolls that followed orders." Saya, however, said that for him, that was perfect. Confused, his friend asked why he liked someone like that. Kira responded, "You'll never understand. What I enjoy is having total and absolute control over someone's life." Kira smirked. "I can see it. You're obsessed with having people depend on you." He really was the worst trash in that place. Apparently, the clone had told the siblings everything. Minori, obviously shocked, gasped, but Makoto quickly told her to calm down. Then he asked, "Are all the clones with this Shiki?" The girl nodded. "Yes. I don't know the exact details, but it seems like he has at least a dozen of them." Makoto then commented, "But according to your story, the clones aren't supposed to have emotions. And yet, You do. The girl hesitated before responding. I don't really know why either. One day while I was working, I saw a news report about you two on TV, and something stirred inside me. A mix of resentment and a desire to escape. So I ran away. Makoto then said, maybe we can use these clones to kill Ishiki. The girl asked it. What do you mean by that? Makoto explained. I believe the clones don't have emotions, which means when he's around them, he lowers his guard. Minori, however, frowned. Are you thinking of using those girls to fight? Makoto nodded. Yes. After all, at worst, they just die. Minori slapped him across the face. You can't think like that. Even if those girls never asked to be born, they're alive. Killing them like this makes no sense. You shouldn't say things like that, because in the end, they were created using my cells. Makoto, however, coldly replied, they shouldn't even exist. It's only natural that I end this and take my revenge. But Minori stood up saying, then you'd just be sacrificing others to achieve your own goals. And in that moment, Makoto realized, if he did that, he'd be no different from those bastards. Minori clenched her fists. You understand. I also want revenge. And I want to save those girls. For what he's doing to my sisters. I want to kill Saya with my own hands. Makoto took a deep breath. All right, that will save them all. The siblings nodded to each other, and the girl thanked him. With that, the dynamic duo left the cave. Meanwhile, in a mansion in the city, Saya was whipping one of the maids. Why did one of you wake up and run away? And even worse, why didn't any of the others stop her? Then, he ordered all of them. Get out there and hunt down your missing sister. Next scene, an alley in the city. One of the girls was being chased. She tripped over a box and fell to the ground. Immediately, the other clones pinned her down. It was the one with the X-shaped scar, the same one who had been in the cave. She reported through a device. Number 3, target captured. However, from above, the siblings were watching everything. Ah, so it looks like the one who actually got captured was Minori. The clone asked it, isn't the original taking a risk by doing this? Makoto replied, don't worry, she's already been through a lot. Besides, they're obviously going to come for her too. When they arrived at the location, Makoto was shocked. That bastard's mansion is way bigger than I thought. Then, we saw what happened before this. While Minori was drawing the X on her face, Makoto handed her an earpiece. She was confused, but he explained, if you use your body manipulation ability, you'll be able to hear what's happening outside. If you're ever in danger, even for a second, just scream, and I'll come in. And now, outside, he was just waiting for the right moment. The clones knocked on the door. They entered and announced that they had brought number 5, the one who had escaped. Saya immediately asked, why did you run away? She bowed. I apologize. I saw a suspicious shadow outside, and I was chasing it, but I already took care of it, so the problem is gone now. Saya warned her, if you ever act on your own again, you will be killed. As he approached her, his phone rang. Kira was calling for a meeting, so Saya had to leave. But he ordered the other clones, kill the one who ran away. Of course, Makoto heard everything and was confused. The clones led Minori to a room. When she entered, she was horrified. Inside, there were countless bodies of herself. The only thing she could think, this is too cruel. She turned to the others and pleaded, you need to escape, before the same thing happens to you. But the girl tilted her head. Why would I run away? Serving master is the only thing we should do. Minori stared at her in disbelief. Don't you understand what you're doing? The girls nodded. Of course. We're just disposing of the corpses. Minori clenched her fists. But don't you realize that this is wrong? If they stayed trapped there, they would never find happiness. But the poor dolls didn't even know what happiness was. They were created to serve their master, and that was it. They didn't need to have that kind of awareness. No matter what he wanted or ordered, they would obey. Because, in the end, they were just objects. Outside the mansion, Makoto was furious after hearing this. Back inside, Minori refused to accept it. This is wrong. But the other doll simply disagreed. No, it's not. Minori, frustrated, yelled back. I know very well that this is the worst thing imaginable. She hugged the girl and asked it, doesn't this hurt? But the girl simply ordered her, let go of me. Even so, Minori grabbed her hand saying, don't worry, I will save you. At that exact moment, Saya kicked open the door. Who gave you permission to talk? All of the clones immediately bowed and apologized. Saya walked up to Minori and slapped her across the face. So it is the same one as before, the one causing problems again. Looks like it's time to get rid of you. Minori remembered everything he had done to her, and she stared directly at him. Of course, he didn't like that. But then, one of the clones behind him suddenly spoke up. Wait, please. Even so, Saya elbowed her in the neck and asked it, why are you giving me orders now? I'm sick of all of you doing whatever you want, so I'm ending this. At that moment, as he raised his sword to strike, Minori threw herself in front to block the attack. Saya hesitated. He couldn't understand why the clones were protecting her. Why did it seem like the clones were actually working together? That was when he smelled something strange in the blood. At the same time, Minori threw something at him, but he caught it midair and slashed it away with his sword. Then he smirked. So it's you, the real one. Outside the mansion, Makoto immediately realized, it's my turn to enter. He smashed through the window, but at that moment, the alarm blared. Saya grinned. Oh, so little brother is on his way. But to him, it doesn't matter, because he'll never make it here anyway. Minori demanded, what do you mean by that? Saya revealed, this mansion is guarded by countless units of her, and since they all look exactly like your sister, I wonder how he's going to handle that. Inside the mansion, Makoto rushed through the corridors, dodging every attack. But then, a battle axe struck his shoulder. At the same time, Minori appeared, shoulder-checking the attacker. What are you doing? He's our original brother. You shouldn't be attacking him. But the clones remained emotionless. The master's orders are to kill any intruders. He is no exception. And now, even you are considered an enemy, so you will be eliminated. Minori couldn't believe it. You and the clones were against her. Makoto, however, told her, step aside. It's fine. I have a way to handle this. He put on his mask. Don't worry. Meanwhile, with Saya, he was cutting Minori. Ah, now I get it. The one protecting her was that clone girl, Dan. They all look identical. Even I'm getting confused. Saya grabbed the clone by the hair, sniffed her, and started drooling like a lunatic. The real one does feel different. Then, he threw her against the wall, while the other clones stood by doing nothing. He laughed up at the sky. Today's going to be perfect. I'll have my fun with you. And then, I'll kill your brother. But what he really wanted to know, why did you come back after escaping? Maybe. You just miss everything I did to you. Minori, however, glared at him with pure hatred. I will never forgive you for everything you've done here. Saya paused. He finally understood. She wasn't just here for revenge for her torture. She was also here to save those dolls. He killed one of them and casually remarked, you really are a diligent girl, even until the end. Minori screamed. She lunged to attack, but Saya easily dodged. With a swift motion, he sliced her, then kicked her hard. Raising his sword toward another clone, he declared, to me, you're all just dolls. And with that, he finished her off. Minori, crawling forward desperate, began using her regeneration ability to heal the other girl. The look in her eyes, rage and despair, made him smile. Once again, he attacked her relentlessly. He left her collapsed on the ground. Noticing that she was starting a summoning spell, but without hesitation, he slashed another clone, telling her, don't move. You need to understand the position you're in. No matter how desperate she was to save these girls, to him, they meant nothing. He laughed. I'm never trying to save them, but you should ask properly. Maybe, if you kneel, I might let a few of them live. Of course, Minori refused. But then, he killed another one. Then with a swift strike, he wounded another, and grinned. If you don't know me, I won't stop. She was getting beaten mercilessly. I don't know why, but this made me furious. I had to skip ahead, because I couldn't take it anymore, seeing her suffer again. And when he was about to do something else, our protagonist arrived, fist flying straight at his face. That's exactly what we wanted. I was so angry. I had to check the next pages, because there was no way I was sitting through her suffering again. The fool Saya went spinning across the room, and in that moment, the protagonist went to put a jacket on Minori and apologize. She said she knew her big brother would come, but that damn big brother took forever. The dumbass Saya was dragging himself up along the wall, trying to figure out what happened to all the mansion clones. How could the boy have the nerve to destroy those dolls that looked exactly like his sister? Makoto simply answered that he would never kill his sister. What he did was incapacitate them all. Saya replied that Makoto really was a boring guy. If it were him, he would have done much more interesting things. As punishment, he was going to capture Makoto and his sister and go back to playing the same twisted games as always. But the protagonist said this time it wouldn't be that easy. He rushed in to land another punch, But with a swift move, Seiya drew his sword and managed to defend himself. The moment the protagonist stepped back, Seiya prepared a slash and launched an instant attack, slicing through the air. The hit landed cleanly and it really looked like he tore through our boy, taking off hand. But what Seiya still hadn't learned was that Makoto could control his detached limbs. And with that, the flying hand slammed into Seiya's ribs, sending him crashing through the entire wall. He landed in the middle of the hall surrounded by a bunch of minorists. Immediately, he shouted for them to form a wall. For some reason, I thought for a second they wouldn't obey, like it'd be one of those moments where they go, no, we're going to defend him, the brother of our clone. But no, they just defended him anyway. And Makoto said he was shameless. But then, all weird and creepy, Seiya said those dolls belonged to him and were meant to do whatever he wanted. Tired of it, Makoto told him to shut up, and the first dolls began to attack him. Seiya easily dodged the attacks, slipping right through them. Then he started recognizing and confusing some of them with Minori. He hesitated for a second, and one came in to strike him with a sword. At the same time, the real Minori, back in the room, was yelling his name. Man, but she got attacked from behind too. Oh my god. Thank goodness, those two bastards are ghouls, huh? But now he's getting captured like a complete fool. As one of the clones approached, he was bleeding and begged her to stop hurting her like that. While he was mentally shaken by everything, Seiya took the opportunity and struck him in the back, saying the boy really did get rattled when it came to his precious sister. Makoto apologized for her being in pain again, but of course, the doll just responded that it was her job. Even so, he insisted it wasn't her fault since she was only following orders. Then he turned to Seiya, who drew his sword and told him to stop looking at him like that. Seiya tried a few more strikes, but Makoto managed to dodge. The problem was that the moment he gained some distance, the guy went off to kill another clone. And at that same moment, the fool came back and took the hit. Seiya was amused, wondering if the boy wasn't even going to try to resist. But looking at Minori, he said he didn't have a choice. If he tried to escape, she'd be the one to suffer. Then he activated the greatsword technique and sliced Makoto into about 26 pieces. The boy fell to the ground like he'd been bought in 12 installments on a credit card. And here comes that damn Seiya again, saying that if Makoto stayed down, he'd get to spend some time with his sister. Is that all this guy ever says? But to his misfortune, Makoto seemed to be entering a transformation. His body was regenerating and he was surrounded by a red aura. Even so, Seiya told the half-dead boy to stop insisting. Makoto, however, recovered and kept protecting the clones. They started saying they didn't understand why he protected them so much. Makoto said he didn't need any reason to protect his sister. Finally, those dolls seemed mentally shaken. Are these sickos finally going to wake up to life? Of course, Seiya said it was nonsense, that none of them were really his sister. They were all just biological experiments conducted by the Byakuran Guild. In the end, they were nothing more than dolls, and he ordered them to kill him. Whoever managed to finish him off first would serve Seiya forever. However, for the first time, all of them stood still. The blonde fool insisted, telling them to obey already and not to ignore him. But the dolls were hesitant, unsure of how to act. He realized something strange was happening. Then from the room, Minori said that it finally looked like they had all understood. They had suffered enough, and it was time to stand by the one who protected them. They should have already realized who the real enemy was. Seiya noticed he was being stared down and asked them to wait. But looking back to the sides and above, he realized the boy had nowhere to run. Only now did I notice. The one with the hood, the one who said she understood the truth. She wasn't Minori. Guys, this clone stuff is tough. Every time I think it's the girl, I'm being tricked, man. Stop it. I'm getting wrecked by this story, taking a 10-0 beating. Now it makes sense. Minori is actually confused over there with the fool Makoto, trying to understand why the dolls are reacting this way. The dolls explain that they're all clones of Minori. At a genetic level, they were basically the same being. It seems that scenes from the past, along with Makoto's constant protection, awakened something in all of them. They began to realize that from the very beginning, he had come there to protect them. Makoto noticed that some of them seemed to have this ability of physical manipulation, something that let the main user control parts that had been separated. And apparently through the same channel that this ability works, Minori had accidentally shared memories from the past. In other words, she was now unintentionally helping them wake up to reality. She shouted, saying he's the master here, and they should only obey him. But three were already standing in front of him as he insisted, and suddenly they declared that anyone who hurt their older brother was an enemy. Tired of it all, he said fine. He cut every single one of them with his blade. But then Makoto came charging down the stairs, grabbed him by the hair, and slammed the fool into the ground. Seiya was already all twisted up, having taken a sword to the back and gotten his hands pierced to keep him restrained. What Makoto wanted now was to figure out how to make this guy suffer enough for everything he had done. At that moment, Minori stepped forward and said that, as promised, she would be the one to finish him off. But she wouldn't be satisfied unless she could end him with her own hands. Judging by the way her legs were positioned and the angle of the hammer, yeah, you already know what's coming. Man, in the blink of an eye, she smashed the guy. And she crushed him again and again, saying she'd only stop when he could no longer speak. But oh man, the dolls shared that rage too. One of them even raised her hand, saying that wasn't enough. They had suffered in unimaginable ways, just like all the others who had died. He needed to experience something similar, but even worse. Makoto said he understood, but that getting full revenge on this guy would be hard. The dolls, however, were crying until one of them said that down in the basement, there was a dangerous creature. A monster created by the Byakuran Guild to be used as a kind of weapon, but in a reproductive way. I think you get what that means, right? Makoto asked if the creature would attack men too, and the maid said yes. It seemed like once Saya had a problem with a hunter and threw that guy down there. Makoto asked if Minori really wanted to do this, and she said yes. She wanted revenge, and he should just follow her. Down in the basement, the fool was now trapped. Everyone was watching, commands were typed on the keyboard, and the beast was released. With that, Saya found himself face to face with Emperor Waki. Makoto knew this was an extremely dangerous creature, and one of the dolls commented that normally the monster only had interest in women. But the Byakuran Guild had altered the creature and now it was interested in everything. Minori told them to begin, and with that, the curtain was lowered. Saya was left there, and what happened? Well, that's obvious. Sometime later, finally, our dynamic duo was able to get a little rest. The two of them were obviously exhausted after the whole fight in the mansion. One of them told them to stay there, that she'd go make some tea. A bit calmer, she thanked them for deciding to take Saya out that way. Makoto said it was the perfect time. He'd been wanting to kill that guy too. Hex, the one he had met in the forest, said that even so, he had agreed to kill not just anyone, but one of the strongest men in the city. That's why she didn't even know how to thank him for freeing everyone there. Makoto insisted that she didn't need to thank him. He had his own reasons for doing it. But now he wanted to take a look around the mansion. He needed food and more information about Byakuran. She said yes, he could go, but she wanted to stay there and watch until the end. With that, she asked number 3 to guide our boy. As they walked up the stairs, he asked what they were planning to do from now on. Number 3 replied that she had no idea, not even her birth had been a choice. They were just random creations. There was no place or person in this world who would accept her. Makoto, of course, immediately said, if the whole world doesn't accept you, then I will. Even if you didn't choose to be born, that's enough. You're alive. Ah, and she blushed and smiled, all happy. But let's not forget, in the end, this is the only anime I've ever seen with 38 sisters. Man. Insanity. Anyway, she entered the password for the door and smiled back, saying she'd do her best to survive. But man, looks like that didn't work out too well, because she immediately took a slash to the neck, by the narrator, no less. What the hell? Her head rolled across the floor like a bowling ball. And when Makoto looked up, there was that bastard Kira, saying it had been a while since they'd seen each other. Guys, I'm telling you, no way he's ready for this fight. He's gonna get whooped again. Look at that. The bastard had already killed everyone in the mansion. He was even asking where that damn Saya was. Makoto didn't answer and Kira said it didn't matter. He was just there to celebrate their reunion. But of course, before the celebration could start, he had to kill everyone first. Kira slashed the air and Makoto immediately knew how this guy's power worked. His limbs could be cut off even from a distance. Kira even mocked him, saying that apparently Makoto still couldn't react in time. But Makoto began closing the distance, regenerating his hand. He wound up his fists and threw a punch, but the bastard dodged. Still mocking him, he said Makoto was slow as always, worse, even slower than he expected. Makoto launched a combo, but Kira just replied that attacking without thinking was idiotic. A real attack should be done like this. And yep, another one of our boy's arms was gone, with the house cracking apart. Half the mansion was split open. What the hell? The good part is that no matter how many arms, legs, or heads Makoto loses, he stays alive, so it's all good, kinda. He said Kira was a monster, and Kira replied that it was funny, hearing someone immortal say something like that. And just because I said that now something's messing with his regeneration, he's trying to grow his arm back, but it's not working. Damn it, why did I jinx it? Kira explained that he had learned to imbue his blade with the holy element. Now when he cut Makoto, it would take longer for him to regenerate. Our protagonist already knew Kira was completely different from the others. He couldn't even imagine a scenario in which he won. At the very least, he needed to make sure Minori escaped. Trying to buy time and think of a strategy, he asked how Kira had found them. Kira simply explained that Saya was constantly sending out alerts, so the second they stopped, he came to check things out. And just like that, by sheer luck, he stumbled upon the whole scene. Then he said he had answered a question. So now it was time for Makoto to answer one too. He wanted to know if the sister was also in the mansion. Before Makoto could respond, the guy was already walking away, saying not to worry. He wasn't out for revenge over his friends. In fact, he was actually thrilled that they were dead. Now that they were all gone, he was certain the two siblings must have leveled up quite a bit, which meant that if he killed them again, he'd be able to evolve much more efficiently. Makoto just replied that this guy clearly didn't have all his screws in place. Saya laughed and said maybe he just disappeared, and suddenly appeared with a wound already opened in Makoto's chest. Makoto spat out blood and Saya immediately started leveling up like crazy. Of course he celebrated, saying this was perfect. Finally, he was starting to feel like he could evolve again. What he hadn't noticed was that both of Makoto's fallen arms, he was holding them by the legs. Our boy said he was going to kill him, but Kira was way too confident, saying, not a chance. He burst a bubble of blue light, blasted our boy back, and twisted his little hands to the sides. This was the Sacred Sanctuary ability, and unfortunately, yeah, it was our boy's nemesis. There he was, getting sliced all over the place, unable to regenerate. Meanwhile, Saya was leveling up and told Makoto to give up, because with the power he currently had, Makoto couldn't even lay a finger on him. Poor Makoto started realizing that not only was he giving the bastard experience, but his regeneration couldn't keep up. Then Kira said that what he sought was absolute power, and he didn't care if it came from Makoto or his sister. That's why he was going to give him a choice. If Makoto went with him now, he'd let his little sister escape. But if he resisted, then he'd capture him, and then her too. And here goes our boy actually considering the offer, asking if the bastard wasn't lying. The guy said, of course not, but it depends on your attitude. But come on, man, you never negotiate with a psycho like this. Still, there goes the poor fool making us mad just so we can enjoy his revenge later. He slammed his forehead to the ground, begging him to just take him. All he wanted was for his little sister to be spared. Kira laughed and asked if he had no dignity or pride left. But since Makoto had humiliated himself so thoroughly fine, he wouldn't take her, and all Makoto had to do was get up so they could leave together. Only the moment Makoto stood up, the guy of course said it was all a lie. Obviously I have to take her too, he said. After all, that way he'd level up faster. Poor Makoto, humiliated for nothing. But hey, at least it was a short-term humiliation. Better than being dragged away only to have the sister show up after. He tried to throw a punch, but the guy dodged. And wait, here comes the doll squad. Number 10 shouted for all of them to protect Big Brother. Kira was actually impressed that there were still so many left. Saya had really taken care of them. A Minori lookalike appeared, asking if Makoto was okay. He told them to give up. There was no way to win against him. Obviously, with a single sword motion, the guy sliced through all of them. But number 10 said she knew they couldn't win. All they wanted was to buy time for the siblings to escape. She handed over an item that immediately caught Kira's attention. In the next second, he lunged toward the three of them. Meanwhile, number 10 said that since he had saved them from hell, now it was their turn to save him. The instant teleportation ability activated, and the two of them vanished right in front of the bastard, who was left in disbelief. Instant teleportation consumes an absurd amount of mana. That's when he saw number 10 collapse on the ground and immediately understood what had happened. He looked at the girls and said that even if they all came at him at once, they couldn't win. But suddenly, they began dropping their weapons. They were choosing absolute freedom, and man, it was getting real dramatic in there. They revealed a little trick from their creation. From the very beginning, Taro had planned a way to erase any of them that caused trouble. That's when Sega saw something big and wild. And obviously, I'm talking about those huge glowing crystals installed just below their collarbones. Folks, every single doll had this magical circuit implanted. It was a kind of biological bomb. And with that, they all said goodbye to Minori as an explosion swept through Seiya's house. Oh, next up is Sajiri. Oh man, you showed up at the beginning of the chapter. My hottie, I mean my little mage, you're screwed. She's considered the most beautiful woman in the Bakuran Guild. To be fair, she's pretty much the only woman in the guild, right? But still, yeah, it's true. Obviously, with that thick and curvy figure of hers, she definitely caught a lot of attention and most of the fools fell in love with her. However, only those who had spent a phenomenal time with her or were about to knew the real secret. Oh boy, now I'm scared to find out this woman's secret. When the guy opened the door, he jumped in shock. Yep, there she was, bathing in blood. So that's the big secret? I mean, doesn't seem that secretive. I know a bunch of guys who'd still go after her like nothing was wrong. No hesitation. Good thing I'm not one of those guys, right? Right? Then we cut to 6 months earlier. Time for her to do some evil so we can figure out why she has to die. In the middle of a room, she said she was curious to see how much she had collected. Looking at the computer data, it said 50%. She seemed pleased, but she decided it was time to speed things up. The siblings were suffering, and suddenly she said this wasn't working. They couldn't stop now. Oh God, she had these little cuts on her legs, tiny details, really guessed to draw blood or something. Yeah, she was definitely collecting blood. But what for? She said she knew that she didn't level up by doing this, but she didn't care. All she wanted was to obtain their blood. The crazy woman said she always imagined the undead looked like zombies. She never thought their skin would be so smooth, or that when it regenerated, it would come back like newborn baby skin. That girl had the dream every woman wished for, eternal youth. That for her was the ultimate goal, because with eternal beauty, money, and men would be the easiest things in the world. She hated those two siblings, who were about to get everything she ever wanted without even trying. But it was fine. As long as she had their blood, she had nothing to worry about. Just one glass of their blood would make her skin young again. Wait, one glass was enough. Then why all this trouble, girl? You're trying to stock up for a party or something. Even Kira over there is thinking this lady's totally nuts. And now, in the present moment, we're in the middle of a forest in some kind of magic circle. It's Kira, teleporting around but not finding anyone. Then he taps his watch and calls Aya, explaining that those damn siblings killed Saya and escaped, asking when she was going to find them. Desperate, she starts yelling, saying she doesn't give a damn about that damn Saya. She wants to know where the siblings are because she needs that blood. Kira, though, wants to know why she's in such a rush. As far as he knows, she's got plenty of blood stored up. Sajiri then explains that the blood has to be fresh, otherwise it doesn't work. Oh, you maniac? If that's the case, why were you collecting 15 liters a day? This psycho is straight up freaking out, saying that at this rate, her youthful beauty and elegance will fade. Obviously, Kira just says he doesn't care about any of that. But Sagiri starts barking orders, telling him to get back to work and capture the two. Yeah, right. Kira just asks when exactly she became important enough to give him orders. If she wanted that blood so badly, she could go find them herself. Their goals no longer aligned, so from now on, they were going their separate ways. And she better chill out too. Anger like that's gonna give her wrinkles. Furious, Sagiri torched the entire base, apparently. Meanwhile, Makoto was waking up in the forest, looking at Minori. He asked where they were, and she explained it was a regional dungeon. He immediately wanted to know where everyone else was, and she just signaled that they were gone. He punched the wall in anger, remembering everything he had gone through to try to save them. Once again, he promised to protect someone, but couldn't. Minori gave him a hug and told him not to hate himself. He had done his best, and everyone understood there was nothing more he could have done. Makoto, however, was still thinking about revenge. He said they had to make them pay for everything. Minori said it was okay. In the end, the girls understood his reasons, and all of them were on their side. Besides, their final message was for the two of them to live for them. Poor Makoto was crying not just because everyone had died, but because he felt weak as hell. He kept saying he wanted to get stronger and stronger, and Minori agreed. With that, the two of them held hands, vowing to become stronger. I thought they were about to stab each other or something, but nope, they were just hunting in the dungeon. Minori explained that after Seiya's death, there was another announcement from Byakuren. Makoto thought it was because of the boy's death, but actually, the bounty for killing them had been raised to 5 billion. Obviously, an absurd amount, and with a price like that, the whole world was now after them. With no real option, they kept walking through the dungeon until Makoto told her to stop. Something was appearing in front of them. With lizard eyes, it looked like a kind of dinosaur dragon. Although I think dragons are just dinosaurs with wings, right? Yeah, I think that's it. And it was already charging up a fire breath. Or was because in the next chapter, it suddenly had its mouth closed again. Guess they forgot it was already attacking. Minori panicked, saying they should go back into the dungeon. But Makoto knew, at 5 billion apiece, they better run inside, not out. The creature kept charging its attack and then blasted fire straight at them. It took off into the air and the poor fools were thrown aside. The forest was wiped out, but at least it seemed like the beast was flying off. Or not, because now it was circling back, leaving Minori in total panic. The creature charged up more attacks, firing at them while they ran through the forest until they found a small town in the middle of nowhere. Well found, because now it was gone too, completely destroyed. The creature's attacks reached 3,000 degrees Celsius, and its scales repelled all kinds of fire, making it indestructible. Only when the world's most powerful guilds joined forces could fighting it even be considered an option, which made them wonder, how the hell were they going to escape? While the monster was tearing the city apart, Makoto was thinking about charging in. Minori, obviously, told him he was going insane. But for the protagonists, this was their chance to kill the monster, level up, and gain the strength they needed. He asked her if she had already forgotten the promise they had just made. With that, she gathered her resolve and said, "All right." She rushed to the right while he went left. The dragon charged another breath, and Makoto wondered if he could reach it in time. He activated physical enhancement, leaped from branch to branch, and looked like he'd make it to its back. Lining up his strike, he was certain. The weak point of every living creature was always the head, so he punched it right in the cheek. But of course, it looked like his hand took more damage than the monster. Minori, on the other hand, approached the leg, trying to strike between the scales. But her little sword just shattered, and the dragon turned to her. It smacked her with its tail, sending her flying. Makoto jumped again, and this time he took a fire blast right to the face. Brutal. Minori came rushing back, yelling at the bastard to stop, but the creature began conjuring another attack, this time using magical circles. She tried to raise a barrier, but yeah, it was immediately shattered. And the worst part, it looked like even her own magic was being burned. Her skin looked like it was being consumed, and in that moment, she remembered number 10. With that, she told herself she couldn't die there. She had to become stronger. She cut her arm as the dragon approached once more. At least Makoto was back, freshly roasted, but alive. He warned that this wasn't going to end so easily. Now he had experienced what it felt like to have his bones melted. But if he could come back from that, then he wasn't afraid. Another arm ripped off, and he was already sending out his flying punch. The hits landed right on the monster's wing and neck. It looked like he found an opening for Minori to advance. She ran in the direction of her last spell, saying she had to get stronger. With that, she cast a spell, Black Hellfire. The monster screamed in agony as it was engulfed in the flames. Makoto had already regenerated his arm and came charging from the side in some wild combo. How many arms does this guy even have? There were 2 arms fusing into another arm, which turned into a spear arm, and he launched an attack straight through the monster's head. With that, the creature was slammed into the ground, and the very next second, a million level-up windows popped up in front of Makoto. Obviously, same for Minori. Now the two of them were just vibing, lying on top of the dragon, chillin'. Our protagonist asked her what those flames were. She explained that when she was hit by the dragon's power, it felt like something awakened inside her. They said it was incredible, and both started laughing. But the question remained, why was there a dragon in that place? Minori said that when she first entered the dungeon, that creature wasn't there, which meant someone must have been controlling it and trying to hide it there for some reason. And for a brief moment, she saw a pink glow in the dragon's eye. The same hypnosis magic Sagiri used. Makoto knew only that damn chunky mage was capable of hypnotizing a creature of that level. Of course it had to be her. Suddenly, in the forest, all the birds took flight. Looking toward the horizon, countless dragons were approaching. Oh boy, and worse, there were people riding them. And it wasn't even Sagiri. From the top of one of those beasts, a blonde guy and a white-haired person jumped in front of the two. Right away, our dynamic dude noticed something. At first, I thought it was a girl with white hair, but nope, it was a guy too. And both had glowing purple eyes. Before they could even say anything, the guy already launched the first attack and Minori blocked it. The fool, instead of focusing on the fight, shouted the guy's name and nearly got slashed. Good thing that dragon level up paid off. He managed to land a punch in the middle of all that. Problem is, speaking of dragons, the other one, also hypnotized, just threw a fire blast at them. They dodged, but realized the blast covered a much wider area than before. And worst of all, Minori knew. Their position had been leaked. Immediately, more people started dropping from the dragons. But now the boy was fired up. He told Minori to handle the hunters. He was going to take care of the monsters. Of course, she had to go into drama mode, saying those people were just being controlled. He told her he understood. She didn't have to kill them because he knew it would hurt her. But for him, it was fine. He had handled this on his own. For the first time in her life, the girl stopped and wondered, was this really okay? Once again, her brother was going to do everything while she stood by. Remembering everything that had happened in the mansion, she told him to wait. She'd been relying too much on his kindness and strength, and that couldn't continue. This time, she wasn't going to let him fight alone. Finally, the girl was going to do something, and the revenge was about to begin. With that, the two of them charged at the hunters, and Minori immediately cast a fireball. Man, it was the most humble fireball I've ever seen. It was basically a fire laser. Still, it landed dead center in the gut of one of the fools. Meanwhile, Makoto was charging straight through everyone, aiming for a green dragon. The wall lizard powered up a blue energy sphere and launched it straight at him. As always, our boy got sliced up, and the worst part, his little legs kept walking and got eaten too. But all of it was part of the plan. He had used venom infusion. The creature's mouth filled with slime and bile, and now Makoto was already regenerating. At least that poison was the real deal. Even without a punch, the monster was already down. And of course, the bastard leveled up a whole bunch. Meanwhile, the girl was dodging hunters and firing her fire laser. The problem was that a big one was approaching and she had to defend herself. Then one came from behind and slashed her with a sword, while another jumped in. Yeah, this was bad for her. But, little sister, I thought our boy was going to show up all Chad mode to save her. Turns out, nope, she was going to handle this one herself. She activated a burst of scarlet flame explosion that spread through the forest, and boom, now everyone's roasted. The problem is, obviously, something had to mess with her head. Even though the guys were burning, they started getting back up because hypnosis was absolute. She stood there crying, desperate, watching the monsters writhe. Until suddenly, they all turned their heads and started walking away. The dragons, too, all heading in the same direction. They lined up and a spatial rift appeared. And obviously, you already know who's showing up. The villainess with the generous ribbons, our dear Sagiri. At least our dynamic duo noticed that Kira wasn't with her. Makoto, though, wanted to know how she found this place. She replied that it was simple. She could share her senses with any creature she hypnotized. It had been exhausting keeping so many under her control, but it worked. Our guy said he admired her courage to come there without Kira, to which she just said she decided she didn't need that trash to deal with someone like him. Then Minori activated that black flame ability, saying the woman's arrogance would be her downfall. The attack went straight at her, but Sagiri simply used hypnosis to make the hunters kill themselves for her, saying it was extremely convenient to use these trash mobs as meat shields. Crying and panicked, Minori demanded to know why she placed no value on human life, which left the witch a little confused. She said that yes, to her, the lives of those humans were completely meaningless. The only thing that mattered was that she remained beautiful and powerful. Anything else that happened in the world didn't concern her. Minori, poor girl, all honest and pure, tried to say there's no hierarchy when it comes to human life, to which the witch replied, keep dreaming. Must be nice living in that little illusion of hers. But it was time for that whole world view to be shattered. With that, she activated Purple Storm. A barrage of lightning exploded around them, blowing up the whole mountain. A crack split the ground between Makoto and Sajiri, and our boy tried to jump to shield his sister. But suddenly, the dangerous one appeared right next to him, saying he should worry more about himself. As he turned, boom, she gave him a sweet little kiss, activating the temptation hypnosis. Minori, watching that, was obviously terrified. Now it was over, folks. Our boy was in the arms of the villainess, and Minori was down below watching everything, like a cuck catching his wife with Koto in bed. From the purple glow in his eyes, she already knew what had happened and began shouting Makoto's name. Sajiri then said she invited them. They didn't have to do anything and yet were young forever. Man, what a dangerous witch. She attacked with the strongest muscle in the body, a kiss right to poor Makoto's face. Not even sure if he can regenerate from that one. Minori immediately jumped in, yelling at her to let go of her brother. But with Sagiri that calm, you already know nothing good's gonna happen. Makoto threw himself in front of Minori's attack, and that girl didn't have the strongest mind to begin with. Now she was totally crushed. To make it worse, Sagiri even said the girl was cruel. Stabbing your own brother in the gut like that. At least Minori didn't break down and rush to strike again. But another hypnosis command hit. Makoto merely punched her in the face. Minori kept screaming, begging him to wake up, asking if he really didn't recognize her. But Miss Ribbons just said it was no use. The temptation hypnosis could only be broken by her, or, obviously, the caster was killed. She gave the order, and Makoto kicked Minori away, sending her flying. Before she could react, in full Dragon Ball style, he caught her midair and smacked her straight into a boulder. But it was clear he was going for psychological attacks now. He asked Minori how it felt to be beaten up by her own brother, and the poor girl was starting to realize that if she didn't fight back, she was going to die. He was just too strong. All battered, she tried to get up, apologizing to him. With that, her dagger began to be engulfed in that black flame. Makoto stepped closer and suddenly smiled, calling her name. That made her hesitate for a moment, and yep, it was just a psychological trap. He kneed her hard, sending her flying again. She realized she couldn't bring herself to fight against her own brother. Now Makoto had her by the neck. In the middle of all this, she asked herself what she was supposed to do. She started remembering all the times he had jumped in front of danger to protect her. The moments they laughed and cried together. And when they swore, they would become stronger. Back in the present, Sagiri asked what she was trying to say. Even with a hand around her throat, Minori drew strength and screamed that she was going to kill her. She even called her an old washed-up hag, which obviously drove Sagiri insane. She raised her staff, saying she was going to turn Minori into pieces. But Minori broke free from Makoto. He went in for another attack, but his hand turned into a skeletal mess because she had spread the hellfire onto him. She began conjuring another blast, whispering an apology. Energy exploded around them. Sagiri had to raise a barrier to protect herself. and now Minori entered her development arc. She thought that until now, she believed that just following her brother would be enough. As long as he was around, he would take care of everything, which meant she had to step up because he was useless. She stabbed the ground, saying this wasn't enough. Then she charged in, already in full rage mode, slicing him up with like 30 quick hits, taking off his arm, even sliced off his neck. And somehow, even without a head, he managed to punch her and knock her back. Even under hypnosis, Minori could feel his punches were weak, as if they were filled with apology. She knew she'd always gotten in his way, but that wasn't going to happen anymore. She was leveling up mid-fight. I don't know how she was killing him and still gaining EXP, but both of them were ranking up non-stop. And then she gave him a hug, saying she was going to get stronger. And boom, that hug triggered another massive explosion. But both of them regenerated again. It was a total stalemate. And just like us, Sagiri was wondering if this girl had lost her mind. Also, I've never seen a character so shiny. Girl is oily in every single frame, just straight up reflecting light. She glared into the smoke, frustrated that she couldn't see a thing. That's when, from within the smoke, Minori said Sagiri must be insane if she thought she couldn't fight her own brother. On the day they escaped that hell, the two of them had killed each other countless times. She had been strong enough to do that a long time ago. Sagiri was now confused. She didn't understand why Minori had such high magical power. And just then, Makoto broke free, thanking her and saying he always knew she could do it. Now it was time for their counterattack. The greasy little witch was wondering why the explosion had broken the hypnosis, but she raised her staff and said it didn't matter. She just activated again. With that, all the people who had been lying on the ground started rising again, along with the dragon. Everyone attacked the duo once more. But man, say what you want, Minori jumped in front to protect them. Makoto took the opportunity to leap forward and smack the dragon, right on the head. But at the same moment, the dragon attacked both of them. Still, Minori was furious now and raised a barrier to shield them. And from behind the barrier, she unleashed a hell flame wave slash that finished off the beast. Even then, that damn Sagiri kept talking trash, saying the two of them were useless. Her magic reactivated on the dragon and the battered people, and she explained that immobilizing them wasn't enough. They didn't feel pain, and they obeyed everything she commanded. Makoto told Minori that if they didn't kill them, they'd never stop. Even so, she said she didn't want to wipe everyone out. Another one jumped at Makoto, and this time he landed a clean punch to the face. But even with his face completely disfigured, the creature stood back up. Then Minori pointed out that the creature's movements didn't seem to be magically enhanced, so they just needed to make sure they couldn't move anymore. Makoto started throwing attacks aimed at knocking them out. But in the middle of it, the red dragon approached, and with it, the saga. And he was absolutely crushed. Minori screamed, but it was too late. Here came another temptation hypnosis. Sagiri warned them there was no escape. Then she started laughing like a maniac, saying it was hilarious how hard Minori tried. And there she was again, putting that oily little hand on Makoto's cheek, showing off her sheen. She ordered him to attack his sister. He crouched down, ready to throw a punch. And yeah, we already know what's coming, right? Boom. A full-powered uppercut straight to Sagiri's jaw, shattering all her teeth. It's a shame she's probably about to get beaten into looking hideous. But hey, it was nice while it lasted. Sagiri, good appearances. Thank you kindly. It's time to go. And the reason her hypnosis didn't work anymore? Minori had stolen the skill, only at a higher level. The witch couldn't believe they were overriding her hypnosis. She launched a barrage of elemental attacks, screaming at them to die. But Minori replied calmly, just yelling die, die, die doesn't really cut it, you know. The greasy little witch, now with a red nose, was losing her patience once and for all. She opened more portals and declared that this was the end of everything. Then she activated a meteor shower. But down below, Minori was calmly holding a barrier. She prepared a circle and activated the black line. Oh boy, here comes the wizard Kamehameha. Sagiri struggled to hold it back with her ice barrier, exhausted, while Minori poured in the hellfire. But the witch was starting to lose. Her magic ran out, she began aging, and then the flames engulfed her completely. Minori declared she knew how painful those flames were, because she had experienced them countless times thanks to Sagiri's own spells. She grabbed her by the face, saying her day to experience had finally come. Then, she activated hypnosis on her. Oh boy, what kind of revenge is Minori planning? Because she said she would give this witch an eternal hell, and the last time she said that, it was to Saya, who's probably still stuck with that orc. Sagiri woke up in that familiar room of theirs, and apparently they even gave her a little heal-up, right? Girl was oily and healthy again. Panicking, she started screaming, demanding to know why she was there, yelling for them to let her go. She tried to kick the wall, but of course couldn't break it. Now I remembered where she is, right on top of that blood collection platform. She started shouting the names of every lightning, thunder, ice, and fire spell she knew, but nothing worked. She stood there, trying to understand why. When Makoto walked past the window, she was about to beg him to let her out, until she saw the look on his face. When he started typing on the keyboard, she panicked, asking why he wouldn't answer her. And her expression completely changed the moment he pressed the little button. Blades emerged beneath her feet, and there she went, sliced up. Screaming, agonizing, cut 1,000 times, until she woke up again completely intact, confused, asking herself if it was real or not. The pain had definitely felt real, but right in front of her, Makoto again. Desperately, she said she'd do anything if he saved her, but he just pointed to the side. There she saw a number, 0, and below it, 9698. Then the top counter changed to 1. In that moment, she realized what that number was. It was the same number of times she had cut the two of them. Makoto pressed the button. She screamed again. A long time and a lot of pain later, she looked to the side and saw the counter at 9697. She smiled, saying she had endured. Finally, she was going to return to the real world. And of course, once that happened, she was going to finish those two off. But just as the counter hit 9,698, the whole thing reset back to 1. Immediately, she panicked, shaking and screaming, asking why. But without saying a word, the little button was pressed again. Obviously, it was all just an illusion, hypnosis created by Minori. At that moment, Makoto was asking what the hell that was. Our previously full-present oily witch was now dry, and her present was very much empty, folks. That right there, that's her true form. Good luck with that one. I'll leave her to y'all. Seeing her appearance, Makoto was sure she had to be at least 150 years old. Most likely, when the Immortality tribe appeared, she found out she could survive longer by drinking their blood. And that's why she was so obsessed with the two of them. Sagiri, now all crooked and dried out, slowly raised her bony little hand, saying she wanted more youth. The two of them couldn't believe that even now, that's what she cared about. Minori even said that this one was really messed up. Then she asked what they should do, and the protagonist did the dumbest thing ever. He said they could just leave, because she was going to die anyway. I really hope they actually kill her, or that she never comes back, because when characters like this survive and return later, it's rage-inducing. Then again, if she came back looking fresh again, maybe never mind. At that moment, Minori noticed something glowing nearby. When she picked it up, it was a brooch with a picture of a family. She realized that the witch had been controlling the parents by using their daughters. She said a quiet prayer saying she couldn't let Bakurin or Yukira keep doing what they wanted. And with that, she walked away, saying that soon this whole cycle would end. Sometime later, Sagiri was lying on the floor, wondering how much time had passed. How many minutes, hours, days, or years? Until, of course, someone stepped next to her. It was him. To be honest, this guy loves killing a friend, so maybe he'll finally do us all a favor. He said he followed her presence and found her like this, on the brink of death. Sagiri tried to offer herself up to be killed, begging him not to let her grow old another second. But obviously, since she asked for it, he refused. There's no way he was going to grant a merciful request like that. It'd be way better to watch her age and rot away slowly in that place. He waved goodbye to the old hag and looked toward the horizon, saying those two wouldn't escape. Later that night, our duo was in the forest, taking a moment to rest. They lit a campfire and Minori commented how far they'd come. Makoto said it was unbelievable. So much had happened to them that they survived and they were finally getting their revenge. Minori, however, said it was sad because in the middle of their revenge, countless innocent people had died too. He answered that he knew, but soon it would all be over. There was only one left. The hardest one of all, that bastard Kira. Once they got revenge on him, everything would be done. That's why they needed to rest and plan their next move. But suddenly, Makoto's expression changed. He told Minori to run. A beam of blue light shot through the forest, destroying everything in its path, and the two of them jumped to dodge it. Of course, it was Kira. He said he knew they were nearby and had finally found them. Makoto told Minori they needed to run, but strangely, this time she was fired up. She said they were going to fight this guy. Took her. This was the perfect opportunity. At least it was 2 against 1. But Makoto, man, he was traumatized. He kept saying no. They were exhausted from the fight with Sagiri. They couldn't take him on now. But before he could even finish his sentence, Kira was right there in front of them. Miraculously, Makoto blocked the attack. The bastard looked him in the eyes and said it had been a long time. When Makoto tried to say it had been better without seeing him, Kira shoved him and told him not to say something like that. Then he pulled out a sword that looked extremely dangerous. This time he wanted to play around. But today, he changed his mind. Finally, the day had come to erase little sister from existence. Their expressions changed instantly. Kira said he'd been pissed off ever since that day she escaped from Saya's house. That was when he realized to erase their existence, he had to start by erasing her. Makoto obviously couldn't see the logic in that, but Kira said he was excited to wipe her off the face of the world. Right then, the protagonist dashed in for a punch, but the bastard blocked it easily. Minori used the moment to attack from behind, and somehow he still defended. But at the same time, here came another punch from Makoto. Not sure how the hell this guy did it, but he was calm. Makoto swore the hit landed clean, but Kira looked untouched. Minori activated her flame blade and went for a strike. He blocked again, and just then, Makoto found another opening from above. But man, Kira dodged again. Then he activated a magic circle to buff his sword, saying they were the only ones who could cause trouble. Once more, they felt something strange in the aura of that blade. Before they could react, Makoto's arm was cut off, and of course our boy stood there staring, begging for regeneration. But this time, obviously, it wasn't going to be that easy. He was groaning in pain, unable to understand what was happening. Minori ran in to help, only to catch a kick straight to the face and get launched. Then Kira explained, "This is the blade of banishment, made to slay immortals. Any wound inflicted by it can never be healed." Makoto screamed at the bastard, but he just smiled, charged up another attack and sent it flying. But here it comes, folks, the golden-blooded move. We don't see for sure if Minori jumped in front, but come on, her face is covered in blood.